All right. Hello, guys. Salt here. Today we're going to be looking at Diriga and the possibilities of using it as a melee primer. Okay. So before we even get into Diriga, I just kind of want to go over melee priming because sometimes people get confused at it. Um, so when people are talking about, you need to have a primer. Uh, I'm using a secondary as a primer. You need to have a primer for your melee weapon. What they're talking about is a melee mod. So I'm just going to go to my Nikana. It's a mod that you can put on any melee weapon, and it's called Condition Overload. And what this does is it gives more melee damage per unique status type affecting the target. So simply, if there's one status on the target, you're going to get 80% additional melee damage. And if there's two unique statuses, so like fire or electric, you'll get 160% melee damage. And it's going to keep going up from there depending on how many statuses you have on the target. Okay, so that's what they talk about when they're talking about primers. Now, another thing before we get into Diriga that I'm just going to go over is most people, including myself, on your melee weapon, you're going to go with strong elements because it's your main weapon. You want to be applying those elements. So most people are going to be going with like corrosive or viral, right? Like those are the two big ones that you usually put on melee weapons. I'm going to have corrosive here, but it doesn't matter. I frequently switch to viral. Now, just remember that, and we'll go over that again later, is that, you usually have the good elements on your actual weapon. So let's go into Diriga finally here. Okay, so Diriga is kind of overlooked a little bit, but he's one of the best companions in the game for melee frames. So I have a kind of a list of what he does, and it's a little bit ridiculous. So he's going to apply six statuses guaranteed to enemies around you, sometimes 7 or 8. He lets you cast abilities for free. He gives you your shields back immediately. He CCs enemies. He converts your energy spent to shields back for you. He reduces enemy accuracy by 20% around you. He gives you immunity to status effects. And you have a potential of getting a 1.2 times critical damage multiplier on your Warframe weapons um, if you're using Prime Laser Rifle or Death Machine Rifle with a critical chance ribbon. So that's a little bit more conditional, that last one there. But that's what Diriga can do for you. It's pretty crazy that he does all those things. And so let's go into the actual build here for Diriga. So the first thing when it comes to melee primers is there is, for Diriga, I'm going to be going back and forth a little bit here between the weapon and Diriga. So we're going to be going over a new bond mod that came out a few months ago, and this is what makes it possible. So, manifold bond. Companion precept mods apply status effects from companion weapons. Okay, there's more to this mod, but that's the important part. Mods apply status effects from companion weapons when he does a precept ability. Now, his precept ability, if I type in Diriga, he has 3 different ones. He has Arc Coil, Electropulse, and Calculated Shot. Now, unfortunately, with Diriga, his precept mods don't really play well together. So when Electropulse is targeting an enemy, Arc Coil won't work. When Arc Coil's doing its thing, Calculated Shot won't work. So they don't really play well together. But that's okay because we actually only need one of them. We need Arc Coil. Because again, going back to Manifold Bond, companion precept mods apply status effects from weapons. So Arc Coil is going to zap up to 7 enemies around you and occasionally do electric do an electric proc, a 10% chance. It's not very likely you'll get an electric proc, but once in a while you'll get an electric proc on an enemy. Okay, but those 7 enemies are going to be zapped. And what's going to happen is I'm going to go out of Diriga here, and I'm going to go to my burst laser rifle. Again, going back to that bond mod, it is going to apply statuses from your weapon to enemies. So, Burst Laser Rifle has full IPS, which means it has full impact, puncture, slash. And then we're going to put 3 elements on it for radiation, gas, and magnetic. Now, remember when I was saying melee weapons, you're typically putting the better stuff. You're putting like corrosive or viral on your melee weapons. That's important because you actually don't want to put corrosive or viral or whatever you're intending to use on your main melee weapon on your sentinel weapon here, because you want to be applying more statuses. So hey, if this Diriga can put these 6 on, and then when I'm hitting things, I'm also applying either corrosive or viral, whatever I chose to put on it, that's 7 elements now. So I'm actually specifically picking on the Burst Laser Rifle weird elements that I would never really put on a melee weapon, right? I'm picking magnetic. I wouldn't have that on a melee weapon. Gas, and we can do radiation now because now there's a radiation like mod that just gives you it by itself with one mod slot here. Okay, I think these are the same actually. Yeah, these are the exact same. Okay, so that is 6 different elements that are going to be applied to enemies around you anytime he does that precept attack. And that precept attack has a 10% chance to also do an electric proc. So sometimes you'll get 7 elements on enemies around you. Okay, so let's go back to Diriga here. And let's go over some of his mods here. So we're going to be going with Enhanced Vitality to increase his health, give him a little bit more survivability. We're going to be going for Calculated Redirection to give him a little bit more shields. And there's a mod that is almost exact like usability in this slot, and that's Accelerated Deflection. So if you look at Calculated Redirection, he's going to give him a shield of 525, and he has a 1.63 shield gate. So if we go to Accelerated Deflection, now he only has 150 shield, but he has almost a 1 second shield gate. But that 150 shield will be charged up quicker because of Accelerated Deflection, and he'll be ready to shield gate quicker than he would be with Calculated Redirection. They're both extremely similar. This is one of those things where you would just have to... It's kind of like dealer's choice. If you like how Accelerated Deflection feels better than Calculated Direction, then use it. If you like Calculated Redirection, then use that one. Kind of dealer's choice there. Guardian. Guardian is going to give you shields when they run out. So when your shields reach 0, Diriga is going to boost your shields back up to full. Now, if you're playing a Necros with like 500 shields, it goes to full. Or if you're playing a Hildren with 10,000 shields, it goes to full. So Guardian is just going to give you 100% of your shields back no matter what your shields are. There is a internal cooldown on Guardian and the amount of like times he can do it like per second or whatever, your Diriga. Now Manifold Bond, let's read the second part of this. Killing enemies with 3 or more unique status effects, that's easy because already we talked about our guy is going to be applying 6 to 8 status effects. So killing enemies with 3 or more unique status effects reduces companion ability cooldowns by 3 seconds. So he is basically going to be able to machine gun spam Guardian. It's actually very hard to die when you have Diriga up. Now, Guardian will only do that to you. It'll only replace your shields if you're at 0. If for some reason your shields start regenerating for some reason and you're at like 20 shields, he's not going to cast Guardian. Your shields has to be at 0 for him to cast Guardian. Okay, Arc Coil, we went over this. It's going to zap 7 enemies around you, and this also has an internal cooldown. But again, with Manifold Bond, you're going to be reducing that internal cooldown. So he's going to be able to machine gun spam Arc Coil. And what that means is he's going to be able to produce statuses and statuses and statuses on things all around you. Okay, and then we have like the basics. These should be on every Sentinel in the game. It should be Primed Animal Instincts, Vacuum, and Primed Regen. So Primed Animal Instincts is simply just going to give you loot radar and enemy radar. Vacuum is going to pick up things around you, and Primed Regen is going to reduce his downtime. Those are like mandatory on any Sentinel you build. Manifold Bond we went over. Momentous Bond is the next one here. So killing an Eximus enemy grants 120% bonus of a random element to your companion for 30 seconds. Now, when you kill an Eximus enemy, sometimes the element that your Sentinel gets is something he has already. So he's not going to be producing another unique element, and so sometimes you won't get an extra element. But sometimes you will, and that's why I'm saying that he always produces 6 statuses, but he has a potential to produce 7 if he gets an electric proc with Arc Coil, and then he has a potential to produce 8 if he gets another unique element added when you kill an Eximus. So it's always going to be 6, sometimes it's going to be 7 or 8. Mystic Bond is next. So after your companion uses abilities with cooldowns 5 times, you can cast a Warframe ability without spending energy. Well, again, he's going to be able to machine gun spam his abilities because of Manifold Bond. So when he casts abilities 5 times, that's going to be in about like 3 seconds. In 2 or 3 seconds, he'll have 5 abilities cast, and you're going to be able to cast an ability for free. It could be an ability that costs you 25 energy. It could be an ability that costs you 150 energy. It's going to be free to cast. So that is the Diriga build here. Hey, Savvy. How are you doing this morning? So that's the Diriga build here. Now we're going to go over the weapon again here. And there's something that's important to know. And let me bring up Diriga here. So Tenacious Bond. Tenacious Bond is another potential mod you could use on Diriga. So if your weapon for your Sentinel is able to achieve over a 50% critical chance, then your Warframe weapon gets 1.2 times critical damage multiplier. So that's huge. That's a large crit damage multiplier to your Warframe for free on your pet that you don't actually have to put on your Warframe as a mod. Now, the issue with Tenacious Bond is that you need to have a critical chance of 50% or higher on your Sentinel weapon. Now, if we look at Sentinel weapons here, the only 2 Sentinel weapons that are able to achieve a 50% or higher rating without a Riven is the Volklock and the Volcax. You could just simply put Point Strike on them, or whatever the crit chance mod is for those, and you would be at over 50%. Now, the problem with the Volklock and the Volcax is they don't have full IPS stats. And again, we're using Diriga as a primer. And so the Volklock and the Volcax are immediately just, we're not using those. They're not good to use on Diriga. So your other option, if you wanted to use Tenacious Bond, now you don't have to use Tenacious Bond, but if you wanted to use Tenacious Bond, is going to be Death Machine Rifle and Primed Laser Rifle. So these both have full IPS, full impact puncture slash elements. And they start at a reasonable crit chance. So Prime Laser Rifle is going to start at 15. So with the critical chance mod and a Riven with crit chance, you can achieve over 50%. Same thing with Death Machine Rifle. Death Machine Rifle is going to start a little bit lower, so it's going to be a little bit tighter. But with a crit chance mod and a Riven with crit chance, you could possibly achieve over a 50% with Death Machine Rifle Prime as well. A little bit easier with Prime Laser just because it starts at 15 instead of 10. So those 2 weapons there, if you wanted to use Tenacious Bond, you would need to get a Riven with with crit chance and use these weapons. So, and again, my builds don't use Riven, so I'm not going to be using those 2. I just wanted to give that information. So I'm going to be using Burst Laser Rifle, which also just has Impact Puncture Slash, but it has a very low starting crit chance, so this wouldn't be one of the ones that you would use for the Tenacious Bond setup. Okay, and again, We're going to be going for gas here. So we're going to be going for toxin and heat to make gas. Going to be going for jolt and frostbite to make status, or not status. God, what am I saying? Magnetic. And we're going to be going for accelerated isotope to make radiation. Now that leaves us 3 mod slots to kind of mess around with. So we don't have assault mode on our weapon, so it doesn't matter if it does damage or not, because it's not going to do anything. So we need to go with things that are going to give us utility. So let's look at Carnus Stinger first here, right? Slash and status chance. That actually doesn't matter for anything because we already have slash. What we're actually looking at it for is this bottom part here. So killing an enemy with a heavy attack reduces enemy accuracy against warframes by 10%. I could have swore it was 20%, but I guess it's 10%. And grants immunity to status effects for 2 seconds. And I could have swore that was 4 seconds. Maybe you. Oh, I think it's with the set bonus. You have to have more than 1. If you have more set bonus, you get more effect. So again, this is a melee priming build. So you're going to be heavy attacking once in a while, especially if you're using Tennokai. So you're going to be getting status immunity. I guess this would go up to 6 seconds too if you had the full Carnus set. But I guess it's like 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 6 seconds. So you're going to be getting status immunity, and you're going to be getting enemies are inaccurate around you for a certain amount of time when you heavy attack. So that's perfect there as a utility pick. And then I'm going with these 2 utility picks right here. Again, we don't really care about the top number because we don't even have assault mode on this on the Sentinel. So this doesn't matter. And then status duration doesn't matter either. Oh, something important is I tested status duration, and it does not work when it's applied from a precept mod. So because that was the first thing, I was like, well, I'll put status duration here. That way it lasts forever. It doesn't work. It actually has to be applied from the Diriga himself, like shooting a target. So again, we're not really worried about the status duration. We're not worried about the 90% damage. What we're looking at is the stats underneath, right? The set bonus. So energy spent on abilities is converted to shields. Now I have one of the auger mods on my Trinity. So if you didn't have that, you would just be at 2 of these, which would be 80%. So 80% energy spent on abilities is converted to shields. Same thing here. This is the auger set here. So you would get energy converted to shields. So that is the burst laser setup here. And again, we're going with bad elements that we would literally not put on melee weapons. That way, our melee weapon has the potential to produce the good elements that we want. Okay, so that's Diriga. That is burst laser. And what I'm going to do now, I basically went over the build, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into just a Kuva survival. I'm going to do probably less than 5 minutes and just show how some of these things function, and how often Arc Coil will proc, and how often Guardian will proc, and how often I'm able to cast an ability for free. So what I'm going to do on Trinity, she has an expensive ability, her 4, I think it's called like Bless or Blessing. It's 100 energy usually. You'll see that it's actually free for me to cast most of the time. And we're also going to show how many enemies around me are afflicted by statuses. Because that's the important thing, is we're using this as a primer for melee builds. And so it's important that the majority of the time we want enemies in front of us that we're actually whacking to have those statuses on them.
Predictable. As expected, Grenier have shut down the environmental systems, sending modified life support capsules.
So I'm just going to let this hit. Look at that. Six statuses. I think he did get an electric proc there, so that's 7 statuses on him. So now we're just going to start hitting. Remember, enemies that you kill that have 3 or more unique statuses are going to reduce your cooldowns for your companion precepts. So every time he casts his little electric thing, you can see that pretty easily. It's like white. Every time he casts that, that's 1 precept he's using. And every 5 times you see that, we're going to get a free ability. And actually, probably even more often than that, because whenever he casts Guardian on me, that is also going to count as a precept that he's using. So you can see most of the things in front of me. There are going to be some weird times where it's not, but I just went down there. Most of the time when he's when enemies are in front of me, he's going to be, they're going to be at with statuses. There are going to be some like weird times where maybe he's like in between casting. The electric pulse. And I found Guardian is a little bit weird. Guardian procs a lot, but it's somewhat inconsistent. Like, if you have shields already, it won't proc. You have to be at 0. And sometimes when you're at 0, it should be procking, and it sometimes doesn't. It's still super worth having on your Warframe. Like, if you're looking in the top right and you're seeing, like, when I go to no shields, like, it is procking extremely often and keeping me alive. Like, I'm at 0 here. Like, it should be procking, but it's not here. And then all of a sudden, it will proc. So it's a little bit inconsistent. It's still worth having up, though, because it is still going to save you quite a bit. So there we go. It just procced. I'm at full. Now I'm at 0 again. And dead there. So a little bit inconsistent with the Guardian, but still worth having because it will proc. It will save you sometimes. You just can't completely rely on Guardian. I just kind of wanted to show like how consistent it is. You know, you can kind of tell I went down twice there because of its inconsistencies. But it also saved me a bunch of times as well. So it's still worth having up. It's just not 100% consistent. Okay? So yeah, this is Diriga. Oh, also, you know, especially if you have Tennokai, you're able to heavy attack. So whenever you heavy attack, you're going to get status immunity from the Karna set. So if you look in the top right, it looks like a little bug. Hold on a second, I'll tell you when to look. So go ahead and look. See that little bug Karna set bonus? Now that's only going to last for 2 seconds, but if you have another piece of that Karna set, it'll last for 4 seconds, and then a third piece will last for 6 seconds. So I think that's about it that I can show there. Oh, you know what? I didn't show casting the abilities for free. So that was free. That was free. That costed. That was free. Now I'm casting abilities that cost 100 energy. So 3 out of 4 of those were free. Let me do another one here. That was free. That was free. Oh, no, that was not free, that one. Now that I think of it, though, I could have Steadfast on my Warframe, so it might not be perfect showing that. So, yeah, that's the Diriga build. I'll show it again briefly, but I'm not going to go too crazy into detail. Okay. So the most important things on this build are going to be Manifold Bond, where your precepts apply statuses from your weapon. And killing an enemy with 3 or more unique statuses reduces companion ability cooldown. And then Arc Coil, because Arc Coil is going to be the one that's applying your Sentinel weapon statuses. So Arc Coil and Manifold Bond are kind of going to work in conjunction to apply a shitload of statuses around you. Momentous Bond is nice. Sometimes instead of 6 statuses, you get like 7 statuses on enemies. And it also is going to reduce your companion recovery by 18 seconds when you kill an Eximus. This is not 100% needed. Like, if you did want to go with the Tenacious Bond setup, you could remove Momentous Bond. Momentous Bond is just a little extra, right? Sometimes you get an extra status. And sometimes when your companion goes down, he can get up 18 seconds quicker. So it's just a little extra, but if you wanted to go with the Tenacious setup, Momentous Bond probably would be the one I would remove. Mystic Bond, this is going to be what lets you cast abilities for free after your Diriga does 5 different precept abilities. Now, again, if you're using a Warframe that is not like an ability spammer, maybe he has a different way to get energy back. Like you don't really care that you cast abilities for free. You could take Mystic Bond off as well. So like if you're using one of those Warframes and you want to use Tenacious Bond, you could take Mystic Bond off. And then the other one would be Guardian. Like let's say you're using Nidus or Inaros that don't have shields. Obviously you don't need Guardian. So Guardian is very strong. It's one of the strongest precepts for a Sentinel, but it's not always 100% consistent. Like you'll be out of shields and you'll know that your guy is able to cast it because you get reduced ability cooldown from Manifold Bond, and sometimes he won't cast it. So it's still extremely powerful and it's worth having on your Warframe, but you shouldn't rely on it 100% for survivability. Like you saw my Trinity went down like 2 or 3 times just fully relying on Guardian. But it also saved her a bunch of times as well. So just not very consistent. So yeah, it's the Diriga build here. And then again, just go over the weapon one more time. I'm using Burst Laser Prime, but if you wanted to do the Tenacious Bond setup, it is going to require a Riven, and a Riven specifically for either Primed Laser Rifle, because Primed Laser Rifle also has full IPS stats, impact, puncture, and slash, and it has a high crit chance rating, so it can achieve over 50%. And Death Machine Rifle, because the exact same reasons. It has full IPS, impact, puncture, slash, and it has a higher starting critical chance rating that with a Riven and with another critical chance mod could achieve over a 50% critical chance. I would probably go with Primed Laser Rifle over Death Machine, just because it would be easier to get over 50% chance. Like you might have to like hope you get a really high rolled crit chance value, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would be easy to get 50% chance with Death Machine Rifle too. But either of these two. And then on the weapon, the important thing is, again, that you pick a weapon that has IPS stats, and then you're going to be putting 3 elements on it. So I'm going to be putting Radiation, Gas, and Magnetic on this weapon. So that's it. As a Diriga build, I think this is one of the best melee primer pets in the game. I actually kind of discovered this build, me and my friend that we go over builds sometimes. We were going over a Hound build that he had, and he was using to prime with. And the Hound primer build is extremely powerful as well. But the issue I had with it was that sometimes Synergized Prospectus would like shoot its little laser, and it would like go down a hallway that I wasn't going to go down, or it was like a little bit less consistent. Like I was trying to melee things, and sometimes the things I was meleeing didn't have statuses on them. And so like I really like his Hound build, and I think his Hound build is a better primer for maybe like ranged weapons, like ranged condition overload weapons. But for melee, I started to look at other pets, and I pulled up Diriga, and I'm going through Diriga, and I was like, well, he casts this precept that doesn't just shoot down hallways; it shoots around you at seven enemies. So I wonder if Diriga would be a better melee primer, and it turned out it was. It worked a lot better. Again, I'm not like shitting on his Hound build. His Hound build is still really good, and I think it actually is a better ranged primer. But for melee, I believe Diriga is the best right now. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, give it a like, and you guys have a good day. Bye.